Are there any other specs in the game that deserve as much love as Enhancement Shaman? Well, yes, there are. But fuck those guys, we don't care about that. We want enhancement today. In 8.2 at the beginning, we kind of made another guide about enhancement, and we got some comments and feedback that we didn't touch on all of the 3 builds that enhancement has. And although not all of them are performing the same right now, we will cover the basics for enhancement going into 8.3, taking into consideration talent, gear, essences, rotation, and a lot more. So stay tuned. But first, a message from our sponsors. Are you enjoying our World of Warcraft content so much that you got to know how it's made? Well, in that case, check out This Is Living channel. It's a new channel and it's not gonna take anything away from our WoW, so don't you worry. But it has all sorts of cool videos behind the scenes. You get to see Marcelian live and how we are behind the camera. Maybe talk a little bit about life experiences and maybe self-improvement and generally good vibes. So check it out after this video, and if you like what you're seeing, leave a like and a subscribe. Back to our regular schedule. On the first row, take Lightning Shield. This will be your default choice for the Storm Strike build and the best performing one, unless something changes drastically in the next patch. This row is pretty much the defining row for the 3 builds Enhancement has been messing with this expansion. The issue is that the other 2 builds are falling further and further behind the higher our gear scales, where at this point they're really not worth taking. If you do intend to play them for funsies, Hot Hand will be your primal primer / Lava Lash option, which focuses on a single target Lava Lash spam where you need 110% uptime on the boss with minimal movement. Boulder Fist would be the Rockbiter build option. The Strength of Earth / Rockbiter build previously served the purpose in filling your rotation with relevant and better GCDs, as opposed to the quote dead GCDs you would have otherwise. This is no longer the case with the Storm Strike / Lightning Shield build, since the gear scales better than it did before. On the second row, Forceful Winds will be your default option for the default and best build. Most of the options that will go for this will simply be the best DPS output with the best synergy available. This also works for the other 2 builds, but you still have some more specific options if you still plan on going rogue. Totem Mastery provides the most sustenance for the Lava Lash build, with the downside that it takes a GCD to cast and that it needs to be recast if you move out of its range. Landslide bakes nicely into the Rockbiter builds, making your Storm Strike hit pretty hard if you align it with the Azurite trait, which we will talk about in a bit. The third tier is focused on survivability, and generally you can take whatever option you want. Spirit Wolf is probably the most you will get out of this row, even if the benefit will not be too major. It can be used to soak and reduce incoming damage from something that happens 4 seconds after you pop it. You will still have to stop doing damage to have this happen, but if you find a way to fit this in your combat phase, it could add to a lot of damage that won't need to be healed. Earth Shield is a very situational and almost never taken option, since the 10% extra healing you will do will rarely come into play. Static Charge is a niche option for Mythic Plus if your group needs as many AoE stuns as possible. Usually you'll have specs like Havoc Demon Hunter that will fill this niche pretty nicely, and it's not like not taking this talent eliminates your AoE stun completely. On the fourth row, Hailstorm will be your ideal choice here eventually. The reason I say eventually is that to complete the build, you'll need at least 1, maybe even 2 Natural Harmony Azurite traits to make this the best DPS on the row. If you are still learning the spec or prefer a more simpler rotation, take Searing Assault. Flame Tongue should be a button you press regardless of talent, and this particular one will just make it even stronger. Next up is another utility row focused on survivability and mobility. Nature's Guardian is a solid pick for all situations. You can perfect your rotation and positioning to never have to move from your target or be hit by something avoidable, but there will always be unpredictable damage, and enhancement is famously squishy to begin with. Feral Lunge can help if you really have struggles keeping on your target, giving you a small charge to exploit. Windrush is a niche talent that you usually want to pick if your group leader asks you for it. The 6th row brings you Sundering as the best DPS on the row. It's good in single target and amazing in AoE if you can align it properly against the group of mobs. Fury of Air is a niche option that requires a more specific build and playstyle that I wouldn't recommend even if you can pull it off perfectly. You might just do almost the same damage as Sundering. For me it seems a 200 DPS loss, so not worth it. Last row gives you two options again. The raid pick you want is Ascendance, giving you a strong 3-minute cooldown that aligns with your best raid essence, giving you incredible burst during this window. It has other benefits as well, increasing your auto attacks and storm strike range to 30 yards, which a smart enhancement such as yourself will definitely find a way to exploit this. Elemental Spirits has a shorter cooldown and as such works better in dungeons where it aligns with that respective content major essence, and usually works in raids if you want more specific and frequent burst phases to deal with ads or other niche reasons. The best secondary stats for enhancement can change depending on your gear, if you are using benthic items, etc. The best way to know what to pick is to sim yourself because BFA, honestly. But hey, we understand this can be tedious sometimes. So, haste seems to be generally on top unless you overdo it and get too much of it, making crit and versatility occasionally take its place since all three are very close to each other. As an example, this is how my gear is currently simming, showing mastery and agility at the bottom. This is helpful to decide on gear such as rings and trinkets, although sometimes it's just better to go for eye level. Again, there is no correct answer here apart from telling you to sim. Otherwise, I mean, you won't lose too much damage, but you still lose a bit if you lean too much into one stat in particular. But if you don't care and end up having to lean into something, lean into haste. And since we touched on trinkets, let's touch on them a bit more. The best trinkets to aim for at this time and when it comes to prepping for 8.3 are Ashvane's Razor Coral and Dribbling Inkpot when raiding. These two trinkets have a nice synergy between them and they work really well if your fights are standard kills and not rushes through certain phases. If you are struggling to get there or are playing more Mythic Plus than raiding, there are a few options that are a bit more consistent across the board and generally easier to manage. Harlan's Loaded Die is one of the most consistent options you can get, and you can pair it with your highest eye level alternative. You can watch out for stuff like Deadeye Spyglass and Gale Caller's Boon, although Boon is a bit more difficult to use properly and you might have more consistent DPS output from a different passive stat boost. A quick mention here, Diver's Folly is your best in slot weapon even if you get it twice. We don't usually talk about weapons, but seeing as how strong this is for enhancement, it was worth mentioning. Furthermore, going into 8.3, you gotta know we will be touching on some weapons. God damn it, man! And finally, we get to the traits. Like we mentioned earlier, there are three builds that used to perform fairly close to each other, but they had traits that didn't scale well with eye level and the general 8.2 gear, and as such they are underperforming at this point, and underperforming the standard Stormstrike build entirely by a margin large enough to just be called fun builds, if you find something other than spamming Stormstrike like a maniac fun. In raids, you want to take Natural Harmony 2 times. This is essentially a must-have for almost anything. You can stack it 3 times, but getting the third trait will prevent you from getting another 1-point wonder that, for some reason, doesn't come on other rings that don't have Harmony. And that is Thunderon's Fury. It's a nice trait to play with and can spice up your rotation. If you don't like the RNG nature of it, you can replace it with a third Harmony. The other options you want one of are Ancestral's Resonance for that mastery buff and increase in bloodlust uptime on yourself because you're a shaman after all. Roiling Storm is again a solid solo pick for the guaranteed Stormbringer proc. The flat damage is nice and can stack, and if you have the option to do it, and if you don't get any other traits that we recommend, stack it. Loyal to the End once is also really good since chances are your raid will have a few other people running it anyway, since it's a good trait for most DPS specs. In dungeons, the build is similar with 2 traits you can swap around. Take 3 natural harmonies here for more consistent DPS output, and replace 1 loyal to the end with another ancestral resonance, since mastery performs way better in large AoE scenarios. The other options should remain the same as their raid counterparts. Lastly, we are still a bit hesitant to recommend the other 2 builds that you can run since they sim a lower DPS output, but for the sake of consistency, we will include the traits that complete them. Primal Primer is the trait you want to stack 3 times for the Lava Lash build, and Strength of Earth will be the Rockbiter option. There are multiple combinations of traits you can achieve if you want to do this. I would recommend you sim them if you really want to go off-road, since you are already playing at a DPS loss, so might as well min-max as much as you can. But enough about traits, let's look at the wonderful essence system for which you had or have to grind for. Yeah, have fun. Approach the essences similar to the last talent row we discussed earlier. In raids, you want Condensed Life Force for general boss damage. It's a simple button to press, it aligns with Ascendance, so it will always feel natural for you to press it. The alternative is Blood of the Enemy if the boss has adds such as Orgozoa, or if you really want more burst phases to get through certain phases like Zakul's Shield. Sometimes these phases do not align well with Condensed Life Force, which is why considering the alternative can be worth it, and it also pairs better with the Elemental Spirits talent, which serves the same purpose, so banzai for double dipping. The standard miners to pick that go with Condensed Life Force are Essence of the Focusing Iris and Blood of the Enemy. They will have overall the best performance, and their effects are pretty straightforward. If you use Blood of the Enemy as a major, however, you can fit in Conflict and Strife as your missing minor. Other essences are situational, and although good, we recommend starting with these as you get more accustomed to the spec. In dungeons, you keep Blood of the Enemy as the major, mostly for the same arguments as before, with Iris and Purification Protocol for your miners, which are usually the best DPS miners for a lot of specs. If you are missing any one of them, you can replace them with Conflict and Strife, which is a solid versatility boost that has multiple useful functions in a high Mythic Plus environment. When you open on a boss, start with Rockbiter to generate some initial Maelstrom. Cast Flame Tongue and Frostbrand to apply the 2 buffs and debuffs respectively. Pop Feral Spirits and cast a Storm Strike. After this, cast Ascendance and immediately Wind Strike. With the natural harmony traits, casting Flame Tongue and Frostbrand will activate the buffs you get from them, making it important to start it off early. If we are talking about priority, your Wind Strike wall in Ascendance will be your most important one. Keep Flame Tongue up, cast Feral Spirits on cooldown, keep Frostbrand up. Further down is popping Ascendance if you don't have it already or it came off cooldown. Storm Strike when available, Sundering next on the list, Rockbiter if you are below 70 Maelstrom and about to cap on charges, and the last one on the list is Refreshing Flame Tongue in its pandemic window, aka if it has less than 5 seconds remaining. This is a general priority list to give you an idea of what ability is most important in relations with the others to cast, and this is for the Storm Strike build, which again is what we recommend you take. The same logic for consumables will be applied as it was applied to the stats section. Go with Accord of Haste and Quicksand Spinel as your most used options and easiest to swap in or out. For your weapons, use Quick Navigation and Force Multiplier. Quick Navigation procs big chunks of haste, which will be good in all situations where Crit-Navars are usually better to just have passively all the time. Get the Agility Flask, no surprises here, and use the Unbridled Potion of Fury for your pre-pot needs. When munching down like a filthy animal, eat Feasts when available or the Baked Potatoes for that haste buff. There are a lot more details about the 2 other builds that the Shaman has, and we recommend you check the Earth Shrine Discord channel for enhancement, where not only will you get more details as to how to play the Strength of Earth and Primal Primer builds, you'll also get into contact and in touch with a lot of top level Shamans that can fill you in with more details and advanced tactics that we cannot put in our videos. And speaking of advanced shamans, a massive shout out to Word Up, who helped us feedback and correct and explain a lot of the things that we added in our video. Word Up is the author of the Wowhead and Icy Veins guides, and if you want more details, stuff again advanced, you can check his work out and give him a big shout out. And as always, much gratitude to our patrons who are continuously supporting our channel. You guys rock, and you're the reason I smile before going to bed and not cry myself to sleep. Is that awkward? Can you cut that out? Or just leave it in, because fuck me, right? And if you want to catch us live playing a lot of specs, Shaman included, and maybe the 2 other builds as well, check our Twitch at twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline and join in on the fun, because we do play with you. That's right, we run dungeons and raids together, so hop in on the fun. What are you waiting for? Do it. Thank you for watching the video, hope you found it useful, and we'll see you in the next one.